الله الرحمن الرحيم. السلام عليكم ورحمة الله وبركاته. This is the episode number 26. The title is AzZakah. It's been translated as Alms, A-L-M, and S, and charity. Maybe charity gives the idea of general sadaqah. But anyway, I'm going to stick with the word AzZakah. No translation, because you can't translate it. As a Muslim, we consider AzZakah as one of the 5 pillars of Islam. You can't be more important than one of the pillars of the Islam. Although the material explaining AzZakah and the fiqh material about the subject is insufficient, inadequate, as the other 2 elements or 2 heads of the monetary triangle, as we explained before. Then before we go at zakah, we have to just talk a little bit about spending in general. As human, we live to consume, and in order to consume, we have to spend. And if you look closely, where you spend from? We spend from what we've got, from our income, from our sustenance, from the provision we have been supplied by Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And to put the concept together, if you go back to the sustenance independence, that's where we go in this life, is from Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. Then how to spend it must be according to what Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala advised to spend. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala made a very clear text. وَمِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ. This itself as a principle, مِمَّا رَزَقْنَاهُمْ يُنْفِقُونَ, is from what we supply them as a sustenance or provision they spend. If you look at it linguistically, is you are restricted to spend within the limit you've been supplied. And that I call it as a principle, because in the West, if you realize, then the principle is to spend as much as you can borrow, which is completely opposite. Then you spend from what you've got. Do not indulge in too much borrowing. This is to start with. Again, what we supplied as a sustenance or provision is not all ours. You have what is meant for you to have, plus something else which is not belong to you. It's belong to somebody else. In particular, the poor and the needy. And sometimes it make a problem for people who think in that way. You say, why Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala, if He's the supplier, give everybody his money and he can spend it. the way he wanted to spend it. It doesn't happen that way. Because look deeply to human, we have something unique about us. It's the social bond which keep us as human. That bond, you have to promote it to make the system strengthening that bond. And the AzZakah is an instrument which is enrich that bond, enrich human society to get together. Of course, as human, we have to, when we discuss in the beginning the word Khalifa, another unique thing about human is we are different in everything, in substance. This difference need another instrument to reduce the difference and as well create and enrich the social bond. This is something about zakah. But when we say why we pay zakah? In economic term, I will introduce something very important. When we produce something, we use something called the factor of production. Some people say it's the land, the capital, and labor. Some people added management, and some people say, there's labor, you can divide it between muscle labor and intellectual labor, which is including the management. But anyway, there is a factor of production. These factor of production come together and you get the outcome, the product. And that product should be distributed according to the way to factor production to the factor production. Then you get something in, what comes out should go back and distributed by what is shared to make that product. That's very good. That's reasonable rules. But when you say these factor production, is 3 or 4 as I mentioned, where is, I call it the divine factor. Somebody say, what is that divine factor? Never heard of it. I say, you never heard about the wind, the sun, even the energy human have, even the intellect human have to produce that? There is a factor, it's called divine factor. Then even in economic sense, if you want to distribute whatever you produce, you should give that factor, the divine factor. And this divine factor is not yours. It's belong to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala. And Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala can decide who that factor should go to. And if you look to Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala has distribute wealth, supply, he said, يَرْزُقُ مَنْ يَشَاء بِغَيْرِ حِسَابٍ يَبْسُطُ الرِّزْقَ لِمَنْ يَشَاء وَيَقْدِرُ, which means there is no formula for providing substance. And he said again, he made it abundant for somebody, he made it less for somebody else. And that factor production, Allah subhanahu wa ta'ala wants us to give it back to the people whose sustenance is less, for the poor and needy. then that's factor production, and the divine factor is not yours. It's belonging to somebody else. And we be in order to retain or pay back to the people who should have the share of the divine factor, which mainly it is said specifically, but I'm just saying in general, the poor and needy, the less fortunate. Then, after the factor production, ye maybe stabilize the difference between people a little bit, and the important strengthening the bond or the social bond between human in general. Then the whole system work together. Remember when we introduced all factor has to come together. When you talk about Islamic issue, the unit of subject matter. When we introduce money, usually they all related. And zakah as well related closely to both of them. And we repeat in more than occasion that zakah and usury cannot work in the same economy. How come is that? If you go to Western society or non-Muslim society, and you have £1,000 or £10,000 or X money, you put it in a bank, the society would say, according to this system, if you keep that X amount for 1 year, you get something in the top of it, which is equal to interest. Anyway, I explained it's not an interest, but anyway, it's usual. But you give you that. In zakah is the opposite. If you have an X amount of money and you put it in a bank or whatever in a society, a non-Muslim society, you should be rewarded. Not rewarded, you should be asked to pay for it, to pay zakah. Then at the end of the year, in non-Muslim economy, you should get your original capital X amount of money plus whatever it is, called usually your interest. In a Muslim economy, if you got £1,000, after 1 year, you should pay, and the total amount should be reduced by the zakah, would be minus zakah. It's a completely different way. Not in just in accounting the capital, no, in the implication, because the economy doesn't work in one factor, too many factors work together. Next issue I would like to say, zakah linguistically means purify. Purify your wealth. Purify your life. Because when you been activated in this life, especially in transaction, you don't get things exactly. You either gain little bit or lose little bit. Paying the car is settle. It's like a settlement for all these little bit for you or against you. Plus, the important thing, you pay the share of the divine factor. I'm not saying paying it, return it to whom it belongs. This is just an introduction to the subject. The other issue is, when I say the literature in Zakah is insufficient. There is too many people who talked about Zakah. But all of them explaining how the Prophet ﷺ asked how to calculate Zakah in his time. Actually, the material is covered, every issue of Zakah at the Prophet ﷺ time. But when the Prophet ﷺ has act in his time, he act according to the economic structure. People used to own camels, own sheep. That structure, it does not exist anymore. Then we cannot replicate the system which was at the Prophet ﷺ. What we should do is to understand the principle. Of course, using all the hadiths about zakah, the fiqh point, and relate that to the Quranic text. Once we understand the principle, we should try to see the economic structure we are living in at the moment and apply the same principle to what the economic structure we are living in at the moment, which I think the whole world now has quite economically share the economic structure features. One thing I realized as well, and you might accept that, zakah similar, it's not the same as tax system. Every country in the world have developed a tax system which involve all the economic structure, all what you earn, all what you owe. With that system, they neglect and ignore completely to develop the system for zakah. For the Muslim, if they can, or the Muslim countries, if they can apply a sophisticated tax system, why they not provide a system for zakah? Especially, zakah is not volunteer action. It's a part of economic structure. Then 2 points. We cannot replicate what happened as zakah at the Prophet ﷺ, but we have to take into account the economic structure, understand the principle, then try to apply it differently, which suit the economic structure we are live at the moment. And we should, as we are able to improve the tax system, which has a historical improvement, and make it sophisticated as it is today, we should build or suggest or made a system suitable for zakah in order to make zakah as a part of economic and financial system in every Muslim society. Coils, again, I'm restricted with time. I'll stop here and I will carry on in the next episode. Assalamu alaikum wa rahmatullahi wa barakatuh.